You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Okay, guys, good morning. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk live here on TGI Sports Talk, live on Northeast Streaming Sports. Check it out if you haven't. We're growing leaps and bounds. Lots of exciting stuff going on. Guys, I'm sharing more live streams today than I have before, actually. My own personal page, the TGI Sports Talk page, the Northeast Streaming Sports Talk page, the Northeast Streaming YouTube page, and TGI Sports Talk page on YouTube. The last two are on YouTube. All of those places you can watch the show live. Hopefully we won't have any technical issues because I've never gone to 5 at one time. We're going to start pushing the needle a little bit, sharing to more places live. I welcome you all in this morning. If there's any problems with any of those feeds, I'll drop the ones that I don't normally post to. Keep an eye on it as we go along. Beautiful day. If you like cold, windy weather here in Northeast, in East Greenbush, New York, still the first and only live streaming sports webcast here in East Greenbush, New York. Cold, windy weekend coming, but 60 degrees maybe by next Monday, Tuesday. We're excited. Spring is coming. Hope it's coming where you are. Want to start by thanking again the groups that allow me to share the show. If you're getting this, you'll have some relevant content. Today will be college basketball content. Good morning, Dave Guyette. Good to see you this morning. I want to thank last week's guest, Matt Bruss, from former standout for St. John's. We had a great interview, really good reaction to the show. So thank you all for watching either live or later on. Also, Matt will be joining us Monday night. We're doing our Big East preview show. We'll have a lot of guests on. Matt will be one of them. I've got the Philly sports guy, Jamie Peggs. I've got Mike Vaccaro from New York Post, Tom Keegan, sports writer who's covered the New York scene and the Big East for many, many years. He covered them. We also have the safety and the sports guy, Joe and Nate, also from the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, as is the Philly sports guy, by the way. And my co-host will be Mac McGrath from Mac and Jack Show, where you'll see me on Friday mornings right after this show for one segment. So anyway, be tuning in live 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to go a couple hours, preview all of the Big East tournament, and talk about your favorite teams and maybe some of your not so favorite teams. But we'll go from there. My guest today, I taped this interview on Wednesday night due to time restrictions of my two guests. My guests were Erich Santifer and Tony Red Bruin. Tony and Eric were part of the inaugural freshman class of the Big East. They brought this league into. They were part of the teams and the freshman players that brought this league into existence in 1979-80. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about legendary coach Jim Boeheim. We'll talk about things they have going on now. Eric has a book that he is coming. Everyday God, Promises Made, Promises Kept. I believe there's another subtitle for that he'll share during the interview. Tony's also got some things going on. He's got the Red Collection. Check it out. I'll post the links to these endeavors on the page later. And Tony's also doing some great work with young people, with the boys and girls youth clubs and things like that. So good morning, Frankie David Cruz Jr. Good to see you this morning. So again, guys, we're going to play this recording of the tape recording of the interview that I did Wednesday night with Tony and Eric. And then I'll be back to wrap up afterwards. If you have any questions, unfortunately, we won't be able to ask Tony and Red, but I can get them answered later. So certainly put your comments in today or later. And I thank you all for joining us today and all the shows that we're going to do. We got some big stuff coming up on both TGI Sports Talk and Northeast Streaming Sports, as I mentioned earlier. We've got the Big East Tournament show Monday night. We've got an NCAA Final Four preview show on March 31st. We're going to do the full first round of the NFL draft live. I think that's April 29th, but we'll talk about all of that as we get going forward. Right now, I want to get to the interview. Again, Tony and Eric, great Syracuse players, played from 79-80 to, I guess, the 82-83 season. 4 full seasons. That's when kids would stay in school. Great players, exciting players. And we'll talk about a lot about what went on with them in Syracuse and some of the stuff they're doing today. And it was a wide-ranging interview, and it was a lot of fun and a lot of energy involved. So watch it. We'll be back after to wrap up, and I'll see you soon. All right. So as I mentioned, my guest today, Tony Red Bruin, Erich Santifer from Syracuse University, 2 former standout athletes at the Cuse. Welcome, guys. I appreciate you coming on.
Student athletes.
My bad. I apologize. Student athletes. You know, it's funny because I always have that argument with people that they think, oh, they're only there for the sports and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Not everybody.
Well, I only reference myself and my experience as student athlete.
Well, there's plenty of them out there, and they should be recognized as such. I agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, I want to welcome both of you, and thank you for coming on TGI Sports Talk today.
Thanks for having me.
We're all in kind of the same age group here. I enjoyed watching your guys' career. You guys were at the beginning of something huge here in the East when the Big East came into creation. But I want to start just a little bit before that. You guys came from a little different parts of the country, right? Tony, you from New York City, and Eric, you were from Michigan. Whereabouts in Michigan?
Ann Arbor, go blue. Go blue. Number 2 team in the country.
So do you root for Michigan as well as Syracuse?
Well, interestingly, when Michigan and Syracuse played in the Final Four in 2012, that became a big question in Atlanta. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and what I would say is this. As a fan, I grew up go blue. As an alumnus, I bleed orange.
Well, there you go. You got yourself covered now.
Yeah.
So as you guys were coming through the Scholastic ranks, I am sure that both of you were recruited by more people and more coaches than Jim Boeheim at Syracuse. What were some of the other schools that came after you? And I'll start with you, Tony, I guess, first. What were some of the other schools that were really heavily chasing you?
I got letters from everybody, but it came down, I would say my last 5 or 6 schools came down to like Louisville. I had a really good relationship with Wade Houston. He was the assistant coach there at the time. When I took a visit there, actually, I stayed with that family. And then Darryl Griffith took me mostly around visiting Louisville and seeing some of the sites and what the school and campus has to offer. St. John's, because it was in my backyard and I had grew up with Louis and going to all the St. John's games, I was a big fan. Went to all of his summer camps. And to today, I still wonder what it would have been like to go to St. John's, you know. And then obviously Syracuse, which I would have to say the thing about Coach Boeheim was he was everywhere I turned. I think he just outworked all the other coaches. And I just felt comfortable with him because he saw me have some of my best games and saw me have some of my worst games. And he still pursued me just as hard, which I was very comfortable with. And not to add that my mother really liked him other than a lot of the coaches that came.
So his persistence and your mother's like of the coach.
Exactly. He didn't have that slick car salesman type personality. He was kind of real.
How about you, Eric? What was the recruiting process like for you?
Interestingly, I got letters from most teams in the country due to my exposure going to 5-star in BC. I wasn't ranked in the top 200 high school players in the country, but here's how it played out for me. If I went to the Big Ten, I would have went to Wisconsin. Colorado put the most effort into me to come out there. which was the Big Eight at that time, and they had a transfer from Maryland, JoJo Hunter, and they were kind of, wanting JoJo and I to build their program from the backcourt. My ACC school would have been Clemson. My SEC school was going to be Tennessee, and I write in the book, Clemson, Tennessee. They both wore orange, and
a lot of orange in there.
Syracuse got into the mix. My other
so you basically were looking at orange schools.
it subconsciously appeared that way as I reflect. UNLV was attractive to me because of the very athletic and up and down, and that fit the player and the athlete that I was at that time.
Yeah,
and that was very attractive. So I had kind of picked schools, in what was now the Power 5 or Power 6 conferences. And my journey started with in high school, when I really realized significance of being a student athlete and involved my academic people, my coaches, my grandmother in the process. One of my counselors asked me, what school would you want to go to right now? And this was late my second semester, my sophomore year. And I said, Stanford. And everything we did was prepare to go to Stanford, academically. And that's kind of launched my whole philosophy about student athletes. So that's how it would have played out. If not Syracuse, Colorado would have been the next choice. And then probably Wisconsin to stay in the Big Ten, the conference in which I grew up.
It's funny. I find it interesting that Michigan is nowhere in that conversation. Why is that?
Well, again, I detail that in the book, so I don't want to give a whole lot away because I want people purchasing and reading the book.
And we'll push the book for sure. I do.
I think because you grew up in Ann Arbor, you know all of their secrets. You didn't want to go.
Thank you. Well, the truth of the matter is, I did grow up in the program, and I talk about a story where in 4th and 5th grade, I had Becky Orr in my class, and Johnny Orr at the time was the coach at Michigan. Yeah. When I go to middle school, Mrs. Orr is my gym teacher, and I grew to be very fond of them as a family, and actually had a very good relationship with Becky, and was in and out of their household periodically. And then in the 72, 73, a cousin of mine out of Flint, Ernie Johnson, had a pretty nice career at Michigan. And that was my first exposure of getting into the locker room. I got to do the ball boy thing a couple times because of Coach Orr and Ernie. And that gave me the exposure. And then as I grew and started being recognized as one of the area's best basketball players, the Michigan players would come watch me play. I would go to the hot spots, the cage. They sneak me into the various IM buildings. And, I can remember chasing Ricky Green around and Steve Brody, and then Phil Hubbard came in, my senior year, or I take that back. It came in my sophomore year in 76. And so in 79, they still had some players from that outstanding 1976 team that lost to the undefeated Indiana team. Yeah. And as Red pointed out, the simplicity of it was I grew up in the program, and I literally grew up there. And I had made a decision going into my junior year and let everybody know I had no interest in staying in the state. Judd Heathcote was doing a great job at Michigan State as we graduated there, just won their national championship. Dick Vitale was at Detroit with some great players. So, again, referencing the book, it would have been a pleasure and opportunity to play at any of those three programs at those peaks in that time.
Yeah. Well, you guys obviously both had a lot of options, and I think Syracuse fans are very happy. I heard from a bunch of Syracuse fans, especially today, happy to hear that you're coming on the show today and excited to hear from you guys. So you're still well thought of in the area. I'm in East Greenbush, New York, by the way. I know I told Tony this. Yeah. Only a couple hours from Syracuse.
Not too far from you. That's where I was living before I moved down here, down south. Yeah. This is where my dad is from, but I love the Albany, Troy, Schenectady area.
There are a lot of Syracuse alum and a lot of Syracuse fans here. So
that year that Syracuse ended up playing at the, I don't know what they call it. It was Times Union Arena. They've been through a few names, but
it's the TU now. Yeah, Times Union still.
You would have thought you were in the dome. The whole place was oranged out that game. It was unbelievable. I thought I was in Syracuse at that game.
Well, real quick, because I know I promised that, we'd be pushing the book too, since we brought it up. Let's plug it right now so we don't wait till just the end. So tell me about, give us a little, the name of the book that you've got out now, Eric, is?
Well, it's coming out. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with my publisher today, and we're going to go into the illustration portion. And the goal is for it to come to publication at the end of March, and hopefully no later than the first part of April. And what's being published that people see is Everyday God, Promises Made, Promises Kept. But the full title of the book is Everyday God, Thursdays with Mr. Hicks, Promises Made, Promises Kept, my 40-year journey. And the development and the inspiration of the book was this gentleman, Mr. Hicks, who was one of my healthcare clients back in the mid-2000s. And he had wrote this letter. It's called The Letter. And it just talks about, have good skills, treat people well, believe in the higher spirit, get a good skill set, and your opportunities are unlimited. And Mr. Hicks was one of the most optimistic people that I've ever have met. And he's been trying to write this book. And here's one of the primary backstory of this. He wrote this letter in the late 1960s, early 70s. And he talks about it, and his delivery in my writing is, he's been trying to write this book since probably the early 1970s. And as I was his caregiver, he said, Mr. Eric, help me write this book. And I took it with a grain of salt. And, what the motivation became, I eventually asked him, okay, I'll help you. We signed an agreement to do that. And I thought about this journey in parallel to Mitch Albom's book, Tuesdays with Maury, which I greatly enjoyed. Great book. So, even though the parallels and the backdrops of me and Mitch and Maury and Mr. Hicks are a little different, I said, that's a good format. So I suggested to Mr. Hicks, let's pick a day. And he said Thursdays. So we started spending Thursdays and talking about it. But here was the transition and really what drove me over the last 2 years of my writing experience. It was a Wednesday night. I went to go and spend my time with him. And he was in great distress. And I was like, Ms. Hicks, let's go to the hospital. He's like, no, we can get comfortable. And we did. We got him comfortable and safe. And he was on 24-hour oxygen. And we were talking. It's 10:30, 11 o'clock. And we're talking about our friendship, the journey. And the last words he said to me was, Eric, promise me you're going to publish the letter and finish this book project. And I said, Mr. Hicks, don't worry, I will. It's tomorrow's Thursday. We're going to have a great session. And, God's going to bless us on this journey. And because he wasn't doing well, I said, well, I'll stay all night. And so I got him checked on about 2:30 in the morning. His compressor was working. He's doing well. I get up to get him for breakfast at 6:30 in the morning. He died in his sleep. And the last thing he said to me was, promise you do this. And I'm sure there's people out there and there's people out there thinking I've written this book to tell all or have some vendetta, and that's not the case. I tell my truth about my student athletic experience, both as an interscholastic student athlete and as a collegiate athlete. I am very careful about not mentioning names or trying to throw anybody under the bus. I expose my own deficits and faults because it's my journey with God. But the book is developed and inspired, and the reason for me doing this is to keep the promise that I made for the promise that I've now kept. And that's really the backstory. And as a Christian book, I whenever I post or I talk about it, it's a Christian book. This isn't, I didn't get lucky or I'm writing a book to throw any darts. And I try to emphasize to folks the blessing and opportunity that I have had to prepare a manuscript that's being published by Christian Faith Publishing, the leading Christian publishing house in North America with worldwide distribution. So it's much more than I think the Syracuse fans and some of my former teammates think that this journey may be. And I'm really proud of it, to have Christian Faith Publishing come on board and excited about it. And you know, when you get that kind of endorsement from a publishing house, you know, I think that merits the efforts and the journey that God has brought me on to produce this.
And when will it be available?
Well, the publishing process turned out to be a little longer than I realized, with this being my first, and I am planning a follow-up to it. So, as I said, I spoke to my publishing specialist today, and well, this is going to be Friday, but Wednesday, and we're going to go to illustrations and put the pictures back that I had there. I have a nice picture of Red. He posted a picture with a Christian verse under it. And as I was talking about our relationship and our time as student athlete at Syracuse, after he had sent me that picture, it was just so appropriate. It was just so appropriate. And you know, the doggone thing is, when they sent me my editing manuscript, all the basketball pictures I'd put in there, myself performing or whatever it is, they had taken them out as part of the editing process. They were putting it back in. You know, the one picture that was left in there? My man Red. So they will all be there, but it's just been a great experience. And I think the last thing I want to add, you know, to the writing journey, it's a journey to keep the promise of mistakes, I said, but I write about the writing journey. I write in real time. You know, this one story that I quickly will share. I can remember the first part of September, I believe it was, late August, John Thompson passes away. And I wake up that Monday morning or that Thursday that I'm scheduled to write, and I write real time about, you know, my time and sharing with John and that relationship and an inflated ball on his desk and you know, like that ending game at Manly. You know, I share that real time as I'm writing. And that made the experience fun. You know, I wasn't sitting down just writing about, oh, this happened, that happened. Really, 3/4 of the book, or you know, just under that, is I'm writing experientially and I'm writing in real time. And so it was a great writing experience.
I'm looking forward to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Last thing I want to say, that you've given me this opportunity.
Last time now.
No, the last thing now is everydaygod.us, and then I'm gonna keep my mouth quiet and let Red have the next 10 minutes.
I'm enjoying the show.
I promise you that we will push that on the TGI Sports Talk page, and you let me know when it does come out, because we'll certainly post that too. Now, Red, you and I were talking about your endeavors in space, which are also very I think geared towards a great cause and in the crisis intervention that we were talking about before. So you've got that going, the Red Collection. So why don't you take the floor for a few minutes and tell us about you right now, and then we'll go backwards in time.
What I've been trying to do is I've been fortunate enough to work with the youth here in the area in a school setting, in a mentoring setting at a Boys and Girls Club, and then coaching, starting out with middle school, JV, varsity, and AAU. And I found that out of doing all of that, after getting kids to learn how to play the right way, you know, learning fundamentals and playing basketball the way that I think it should be played, nothing gives me more joy than helping kids get the exposure that they need to maybe let their craft help them get in college. So I've been trying to take kids to exposure tournaments where you don't get like, it's not like New York City down here or Michigan or Atlanta or big city. You know, we're kind of like, this place is more like a tourist area. People usually come to Hilton Head area to play golf and stuff like that. But we have some good talent down here and some good kids. And I think all they need is the opportunity to be seen. So I try to partner up with other programs that travel to some tournaments that might better their chances to get seen, and then use my contact from when I was playing to make the calls for coaches to say, yeah, Red, send me some film of the kid and I'll give them a look and hope that they like what they see. And then, you know, other than that, I've got a clothing line going with a good friend of mine, Peter Haber, who's also a Syracuse alumni. He lives in New Jersey. And just talking, me and him, he picked me up from the New Jersey airport when I had flew in to go to an alumni game, and we started talking, and it just came up. He was talking about what some of the things I plan on doing in the future, and I just kind of almost jokingly told him I'd like to do like a sports apparel line, one day or something. And he said, tell me about it. And I didn't know what he was thinking at the time, and he's getting me telling him all of my ideas and how it would work and what some of the things I'd like to do with it. And we go up to Syracuse, and we have a great alumni weekend. I mean, everybody's there. Since Bernie Fine, who used to keep those things going, wasn't part of the program anymore and had moved on, we kind of got away from doing things as an alumni, and it was sorely missing. The players were always calling, like, anything going on? And it was like, no, I haven't heard anything. Nobody was getting back to us. So, and I want to give a shout out to Sonny Spira. He kind of took the lead in trying to get things going and got with John, the AG, and let's get it going. Let's get the guys coming back again and feeling the university spirit. And so it was a great weekend. We went to the AD's house for a brunch. Everybody came together and going over ideas, and just it was a great game. But to make a long story short, I don't want to get like Eric, because he he's got those Stanford words. I don't got those big words like he has. So
he's passionate, I can tell.
Yeah, that's my man. I mean, we live together. We know each other in and out. It was just an experience that you can't put a price tag on. I got back about 3 weeks after I had got back. I get all these texts coming, and my phone is just blowing up. Ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, who is this sending me all these texts? So I look, and it's all these designs from Peter and about different ideas for the clothing line, where he's already got the print and everything set up. He's like, what do you think? I'm like, I love some of this stuff. He's actually got some logos of me somehow printed and everything. He's like, if you want to change this, change that. I'm like, what are you doing? He said, oh man, we're putting this business together. That's what you wanted, right? And it was like, he just went ahead and did, how you talk about doing something, he just took it to the next level and laid it all right there for me. All I had to do was just pick it up and go with it. And it's been a dream come true ever since. It's outdoing my expectations right now. I don't know how we're just winging it, and somehow it's working. So when we finally figure out what we're doing, it's going to be a monster.
Good stuff. And we'll continue to, help you guys promote all your endeavors as we go forward. That's what I try to do with the guests that I get on. So let's take you back in time now that we've spent time in the present. And so you get to Syracuse. You guys are obviously, they're closing the Manley Fieldhouse. They're opening the Carrier Dome. You guys are part of the beginning of the Big East. A huge with the basketball in the East.
Yeah. I got a story I like to tell about that, because during the transition, people were constantly saying, you would see little snippets in the paper saying, oh, it's not going to, because people were passionate about Manley. And I really only spent 1 year at Manley, so I didn't really get a chance to really get the whole history of it and everything. My best memories are from the Dome. I didn't play as much as Eric played as a freshman, so I was kind of glad to get out of Manley. But anyway, what we kept hearing about was, are you going to be able, the Dome is going to be big and cold, and it's not going to have that zoo feel, and, we're right on top of the other teams, making them go crazy. We're the reason the guys won, and, making jokes. It's just not going to be the same, or how can it ever be the same? But once we got in there and, Eric started shooting those jumpers, and then we had Leo Routins throwing the alley-oops from half court, and we just had such an exciting team. I jokingly every time there's a picture of us doing, I say we were like the Beatles. It just became amazing. We gave the Carrier Dome its own identity, and then you very rarely heard of people talking about Manley Fieldhouse this, Manley Fieldhouse that. It was just amazing to know that we made the transition, and that the Dome was going to have its own identity and its stories like Manley did.
Certainly night and day between the two places. I mean, Eric, if you had your choice, would you have played your entire career at Manley Fieldhouse, or did you enjoy the Dome?
Well, the Manley reminded me of my high school gym. It was a dome and a very similar setting and environment. So the physical transition was part of the very comfort zone for me as I came in as a freshman, and and I did play significant minutes, nearly 30 minutes a game as a freshman. Getting to the Dome, the thing that was exciting about the Dome initially were the loud crowds. And I remember about a year ago reading Coach Boeheim being a little bothered by, the participation of the crowds in one of their games, that they weren't engaged. And, I thought to myself, and I'd like to think of, I was the player initially that called that crowd when we needed them. I was the one that reached out to them and told them to get involved. I was the passionate leader, and we fed off of that. And it was part of my character. And I think it helped that large of a crowd to learn how to be engaged. And I was that conductor initially.
Yeah.
And,
that's a memory that I'm always going to have. I don't think I've ever heard it louder when, say, and Eric usually did it, not when he made a great play, when me or Leo or somebody makes a great play and he heard the crowd wanting to go crazy, he'd give them the permission to go crazy. He started doing this. He was like a conductor. The more he did this, the louder they would go crazy when he did it. I always remember that. It was funny.
And the thing that some people don't realize that you hear announcers talk about and you want a crowd to do, sometimes when we're in a funk and we needed that push, I'd go get them then.
Yeah.
Not only the exuberance of a moment, the hometown crowd is supposed to be there and participate and interject, as passionately when you haven't scored in 2 minutes than when you're on that 11-0 run, because that's where you need them. You hear 30,000 people and they're going crazy. You talk about adrenaline? Kidding me? I have one story that I want to share quickly that I don't think anybody has shared or knows about Red and I. After I signed, and Red deservingly so had his visibility and ranking as a high school basketball student athlete, but Red and I played against each other in Jacksonville, Florida, in the semifinals of the AAU National Championship, and we spent most of the game in each other's grill.
Talking junk to each other.
Yep. And they beat us 92-94.
What was that score again? I didn't hear you.
94-92. They beat us by 2, and they went on to win the high school AAU championship. The format for AAU.
Hey, Eric, looking back, I don't even know if we knew who it was, but do you know who the team was that we did beat in the championship?
I don't know. Maybe
you're about to find out. It was Sidney Lowe and Wittenberg.
Wittenberg, right.
Yeah. And they had another 7-footer that I guess everybody thought was going to be the next Jabbar, but Earl Jones or something like that. Does that sound familiar? Yeah.
That's right. And I can't remember who we played in the consolation game, but we ended up winning that. And funny thing about that, a few months ago, I pulled up an article from my hometown paper in Ann Arbor that said, Sanford leads Michigan AAU team to third place finish in the National AAU tournament. Excuse me, I'm trying to find my place here. I scored the winning basket, but that was the first meeting for Red, the first actual meeting for Red and I. And, my takeaway was certainly that, excuse my language, I'm like, me and Homeboy are going to Syracuse and we're going to pitch a bitch for the next 4 years.
Yeah, it was amazing, man.
So you guys came in, when you came into Syracuse, you came into a pretty good basketball team with Roosevelt Bowie and Louis Orr in their senior years, right?
Yeah, we spent most of the year ranked number 2. We would have probably been number 1, but DePaul had that great team with Mark Aguirre and Terry Cummins and Clyde Bradshaw and those guys. So we kept going back and forth between 1 and 2 most of the year.
And you guys, in the first year of the Big East, I think you only played 6 games, right? League games or something like that.
That's correct.
Very short schedule. You guys did win the initial Big East championship, right? Or co-champions, I guess.
Well, we finished in a 3-way tie, and just how the tiebreaker broke out, we went into the Big East tournament tied for first. And, again, it was a great experience being the founding freshman group in the Big East. And, I hope to do something with that in coming time to give greater recognition to that group. Because you tend to hear about the Big East journey, and some folks believe it started with Pearl and Chris and Patrick. It started with me and Red and John Bagley and David Russell and that crew. We're the founding freshmen of the Big East and the first graduating class of the Big East.
Something to be proud of, I can tell you.
Absolutely. We are the foundation of it. So I'm very proud to have been a part of that. And as far as freshman year for me, I just had a great opportunity. The team before us was 26-4, and the only graduating player of significance was Dale Shackelford at the 3 spot. We had a couple kids at Gooding and Rick Harmon transfer out, and so the only available spot was a 3 spot, and that included me and Red and Ron Payton and Mike Sheehy and Chris Jarepko. And again, I write about how I approached that, and there was never a doubt in my mind that I was going to win that competition. That's just me as a person, not to disparage them. But we had a great year. And, again, it's one of the reflections that I have, in my journey that I write about. We lost 3 regular season games. We lost to Old Dominion by 1. And, I'm averaging a dozen a game. I score 1. Georgetown comes in and closes Manly. We lose by 2 after being up 30-16 at half. I'm averaging 11 a game. They hold me to 2. We lose a couple weeks later in the Big East Final to Georgetown by 5. They hold me to 2 again. And so, I said, had I had my regular and consistent performance as a freshman, we possibly go into the tournament 29-0.
And you were a number 1 seed, I think, too, in the tournament, correct?
Number 1 seed in the East, and we got to bye. And I'm going to turn it back over to Red.
Lost to
Iowa.
Iowa, Ronnie Lester, right?
Ronnie Lester and Keith Brookins. And
they went to the Final Four that year, didn't they?
Went to the Final Four that year because they beat Georgetown the next round.
Yeah.
They beat Georgetown next round. But that going into the tournament, we had to bye. Then we played Villanova. Again, not to take away from our careers or take any moment here, but that first round game that we played as a freshman probably put me on the collegiate map. I dropped 29, lead Syracuse, number 2 team in the country, to a victory over Villanova, and so that certainly launched my opportunity as a nationally recognized collegiate.
Yeah. Well, let me go to Tony for a second and go off the court for a second. Tony, what was it like coming, upstate to Syracuse from New York City? What was it really like for you?
It was really different. I mean, it snowed up there from like Halloween to Easter.
Yeah, it still does.
It was incredible. I mean, it was like, what you got to realize is Syracuse is a decent-sized city, and it has no pro basketball team. So it took me a while to get it, but we're like a pro basketball team. So it was like the craziest things would happen. Like girls showing up at our apartment. I think most of them coming looking for Eric. He was always the one.
True.
It was, people just. It was incredible. It was. Being, like you said, being in a small town, but being the Knicks, we go in a restaurant to get something to eat, and me and Eric would take our money out to pay, and no, your bill's already been paid for. I don't think we was able to ever spend $1 in a restaurant. People just coming up with you with get rich schemes, and women. It was just an amazing experience. It's just, priceless.
What about you, Eric? Was it any? Ann Arbor, I don't know much about the size of, to be honest with you. Was there any transitional for you there?
Getting used to being with a large population of people from the Northeast, and again, it's another share. I came to Syracuse talking about, I want an orange pop or give me a pop, and people are like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, Coke. Oh, you want a soda? I was like, what?
Well, if they were from Rochester, they knew what you were talking about. That's what they call it in Rochester.
Yeah. Well, yes, you had Cassandra. So as you moved west from Syracuse, it became pop, and in the Northeast corridor. So, but the transition. And you talked about Coach recruiting us, and this is not to take anything away from Coach Boeheim. Coach Boeheim had no participation in my recruitment. All that credit goes to Brendan Malone. Okay. Even as I had my dinner, my visit, I said to Coach Boeheim, and again, I'm just telling the truth of this of the journey. I knew it was the fit for me. Louis Orr did an outstanding job being my host, and but the thing that resonated that Brendan kept saying to me is the Big East is going to start. He shared Dick Abbott's dream, but the biggest thing was, he says, you have a chance to come play in the largest media and pop megapolis in the country, if not the world.
Yeah.
And once I understood that, that became significant, and probably the primary reason I came to Syracuse. And as I did the book journey, the publisher said, how are people going to recognize you? What do you think? And I said, there's probably 7 to 10 million people out there that may not know me, but will recognize my name. And if I stay here and associate with Syracuse, will recognize that.
Well, somebody's phone's going off. I don't know if hope you don't have an emergency there.
Yeah, it's not me, but yeah. So that's the real reason I came to Syracuse, because of the Northeast corridor.
Cool. And so let's talk about Coach Boeheim for a second, and your guys' relationship with him, and his impact on the team. I mean, first of all, did you think he'd still be coaching here in 2020 when you guys were there 40 years ago?
Right.
I'm having a problem with my mic or something, guys.
We can hear you, so.
Yeah, I hear you well.
Yeah.
Hello?
So you can't hear me, maybe. We can hear you, though.
Okay. I can't really hear you guys good. I don't know. The sound went really low.
Well, Tony's playing around there, Eric, tell us about your kind of relationship with Coach Boeheim and your thoughts on his career.
As a basketball coach, incredibly fair. I make very clear in my writing journey that I would come back to Syracuse and play for Coach Boeheim over and over again. I have a great deal of respect for him as a basketball coach, and our experience as a basketball coach. And I'm saying that very clearly, and I won't go into any details because I respect our journey. Other than my appreciation for his greatness and my 4 years playing for him as a basketball coach, again, I'm not going to speak to it on this platform. I address it in the book. And I'm going to leave that at that right now.
Fair enough. We'll look forward to seeing it there. Tony, is there anything you want to interject about Coach Boeheim and his legacy or your time with him?
I've had a great relationship with Coach. As you know or may not know, I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, and Coach Boeheim has stuck by me at times where I don't even know if I would have stuck by me. And so, I have nothing but love for him. If you would ask me that my freshman year, I might have gave you a different answer. But, now, as a man and have been through the things that I've been through and seen, and have went into coaching myself and see what, how hard coaching is, I get to appreciate some of the things that he prepared us for on another level as far as coaching goes, in terms of a personal thing, not taking coaching and basketball aside. I see as a person how he kept his word and made sure that I graduated and stuck by me when I went through trials and tribulations, and I can't really say enough great things about him. And I'll leave it at that.
And
I have one share that I grew to appreciate, a coaching move that he made our sophomore year, and just being young and the ego about playing and starting. And I think he made a move sophomore year that greatly affected both of our careers. And my initial response was, wait a minute, I don't agree with that. But I think it was the right decision, and it led to the success that both Red and I ended up having. And that was sophomore year after about 15 games. We were struggling a little bit. Danny and I are leading scorers. I probably was the leading scorer at the time. And Boeheim calls me in the office and says, I'm going to start Red at small forward. He's beat you out. And, no disrespect to Red, I had contention with that.
Mm-hmm.
But he would explain to me later that, we needed to get Red going. We needed to get Red more time. We needed to get him psychologically into it. But in starting, all that helped him. And it really was the springboard for him. At the end of the day, my minutes weren't reduced and my effectiveness wasn't reduced. And as I went through the rest of the year, and even Red talk about maturity as I look at it, and again, I write in a book, it was just one of those mature things. I growled at Coach Boeheim about that. But it truly was. And here's where it came most significant. That situation allowed me to come off the bench and start playing some two guard because I had the flexibility. I could come in and play 3-4, 2-3 or 4, in the zone. And the athleticism allowed me to start playing some 2. So when Marty had got injured the last game of our sophomore year, going into the Big East, and I love Marty, and Marty's a great player, great shooter, had great court awareness. If you look at that Big East run and that NIT run, what we looked like and how we played as a team changed significantly when I became the starting 2 guard. And Red and I and Leo were spending a greater amount of time with the success Danny Shays was having as a senior, but the more time we spent collectively, and that's, again, I love Marty, but that extra 12, 15 minutes that we started spending on the court together because of Marty's injuries made us a more athletic team, a higher scoring team. And I think that midseason decision by Coach Boeheim turned to have the fruition to lead to the success that Red and I saw towards the end of our sophomore year, and then the careers that we had as juniors and seniors.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. I mean, there's a lot of talk about big threes like in the NBA today, right? And you guys had a big three with you two and Leo Routens. I think was a great combination. You guys were great together. Fun to watch.
Yeah.
Fun to watch.
Go ahead, Ray.
I was going to say is kind of like another of the genius of Coach Boeheim. I mean, I think he gave me a different story about it. He was like, you guys are all caught up in who's playing guard and who's playing this. He said, the only one that's out there on the court that's not a guard is goddamn Danny Shays. He's 7 foot. You guys just go out there and play basketball and stop thinking of it as positional and play. And I think once we got that in our heads and stopped like competing at spots and just went out there and just didn't think in terms of like you're a 1, you're a 2, you're a 3, and just play ball with the talent we had, and we just made it mesh and just and it clicked,
It's interesting. You guys talk about your senior year and how you did start to click. You didn't make the NCAAs that year. You did win the Big East tournament in the second year, but I'm guessing that was not an automatic bid at that point in time.
Because the league was so new. But, I still believe to this day, we clicked at exactly the right time. And had that team got in, I think that team could have won a national championship.
Yeah.
We lost in, I think, triple overtime to Nolan Richardson's Tulsa team with Paul Presley. I mean, he was a great player. And, I think I lost 5 pounds that game. That game went on forever and ever and ever. But I really think that team, the way we clicked at just the right time, had we got in, that could have been a national championship team.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I mean, you guys played. You mentioned some guys already that, in your first couple of years, but you played with really good players. We mentioned Routens. We mentioned Orr and Bowie early on. But towards the end of your careers, Andre Hawkins and Raphael Addison, right? Some great players.
People
Wendell Alexis.
probably mentioned Danny Shays. He played 16 years in the league. You know,
Who's that? I'm sorry.
Danny Shays.
Yeah,
Danny
like
Shays.
16 years. You know.
yeah. Danny had a great senior year, and I think that was the precursor to what he could do and what he did do in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Great
Freshman
passer.
year, freshman year when we came in, and I think it didn't work because the previous 2 years he primarily, I'm speaking of Danny, was subbing behind Roosevelt. But the first couple games freshman year, the starting lineup was Rosie, Lou, and Danny at the forwards, and Marty Head and Ed Moss at the guards. And great team, especially, you know, as Red just said, the success that Danny went on to have as a pro. But athletically, we were a little inept, and you didn't have a true three on the floor, and that opened the door for me and some playing time for Red as well. But Danny really, that senior year, he was a stud. He was consistent. And, you know, as the camaraderie and the continuity between Tony, Leo, and I, and let me say this, Leo is the best basketball talent that I've ever played with as a teammate. I don't know that his career reflects that at Syracuse, but from talent,
I've never played with a better passer. Unbelievable, man.
Better player, because he really could do it all in terms of my opinion. I'm not I'm being subjective and not judgmental.
You think a guy like Leo Rollins would be more appreciated in today's game than he was then?
I think both him and Danny would be appreciated. Think about the big men now. They're not doing like what Roosevelt Bowie did, just post up on the block. They're coming out and shooting threes. You know, Danny was ahead of his time. Guys like Leo was ahead of his time. 6'8", 6'9", can come out and shoot jumpers, pass, open guys. They've got more of a modern game than. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. I was just going to say, let's make no mistake about Leo. Leo's talent was recognized. He was the 18th pick, and I went with him to the pre-NBA camp. I went with him to Hawaii, and he played well, and I didn't play as well as I needed to. I'm first team All Big East. He's third team. He's the 18th pick, and I'm early third round. That's the respect and the immense of his talent, and he deserved to have been picked where he was because he was that talented and skilled, especially with the size.
I'll give him another plug, Eric. Had he not hurt his knee,
that's right. That's right. He had knee troubles. He had knee troubles while we were in school, and then had some issues early in his pro career.
Yeah, but I mean, anytime I went in the training room, he was there. He was sitting in a bucket of ice with his knee, you know. So I don't know if people know or not, he really, I don't think people ever got to see the real 100% Leo, you know, healthy.
And Red, to that point, I think at points in your career with injuries, I don't think that the duration of your career was to the level that you're capable of, you're physically talented enough for a few minor injuries here and there. And I think especially junior year, we finished 19 and 11 and we struggled. And, you know, part of that struggle was, in my subjective opinion again, was, you know, the injuries that Leo and Tony had periodically throughout the year, because there were times where, you know, it wasn't the three of us on the floor. It was sometimes just the two of us, and there may be
and you know, this is I try to stay positive, but this will be the one probably negative thing that I'll say, and it might just be all college basketball programs are like this. It's not like the NBA where you have 82 games. The college season is really so short, you know, 29, 30 games or so, that when you have an injury, they don't really attend your injury to make it better. They attend your injury to get you good enough to withstand the pain and get back to the next game. So you never really get a chance to fully heal. You're only fixed good enough so that you can function, you know, as close to 100% as you can. So say you get a bad ankle injury, you know, most of the training and the work that they do on you is just to get you back on the court, not to totally, you know, fix you 100% to get you where you can withstand whatever it takes to get the swelling down and the pain level down, just to get you on the court. So,
yeah, I don't necessarily think that's a negative. I think you're dead on. I mean, I think that's just unfortunately the way that the game it's looked at.
Yeah.
The players get looked at.
In junior year, we weren't deep enough to lose Red or Leo for multiple games, and we did lose them for multiple games for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I think you guys would have had a much different year if they'd been healthy, for sure. Right?
Oh, no doubt. You talked about the three of us, and I said, and Billy Goodwin came back with a good retort on Facebook. I said, and I still believe this. Our junior senior year, from the 2, 3, and 4 spot, Tony, Leo, and myself were as good as anybody across the country.
Yeah.
Certainly senior year, you had Billy Goodwin, David Russell, and Chris Muller, and that's a hell of a team too. But night in and night out, we were as good as any trio at those swing positions across the country.
Yeah, it would have been fun to see the three of you healthy throughout those years.
Absolutely. I agree.
Let me ask you guys, because again, we talked earlier about you guys being the birth of the Big East, and obviously the Big East today is a whole lot different. Well, it is different because Syracuse is in the ACC, so we can't say it's not different. I mean, how do you guys feel about the breakup of the Big East as it was? Syracuse and BC and Pittsburgh wasn't part of the original Big East, but these teams going to the ACC and these super conferences. What are you thinking about this type of thing? You wish it was different.
Yeah, well, there's only one answer. You can't even hide this, or you can't decorate it, or you can't dance your way around it. It had to be strictly for money, because everything else with the Big East was too perfect. I mean, the league was designed for maximum, for maximum media coverage. They wanted a team in DC, they wanted a team in New York, they wanted a team in Boston, all the metropolitan areas. What they didn't figure into that was football money. These were great basketball programs in good media covered metropolitan cities, but a lot of those schools didn't have competitive football teams, which is the big money. So, I mean, we could probably go around all day, but it was strictly a money thing.
Yeah, it's the football teams that left, right? So
here's my take, and here was the most crucial decision, in my opinion. Penn State's decision to go to the Big Ten. At the point Penn State decided to go to Big Ten, the football conference included West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Miami, Pittsburgh had joined, and Penn State joins that conference, and that lays a stronger foundation for football and all those historical rivalries. Penn State, Pittsburgh, Penn State, Syracuse,
Boston College.
College, all of those ECAC rivalries, and the Big Ten, not geographically, but financially, became the more financially attractive place for Penn State. And again, I share with people when I talk about this, just what I'm sharing now. Had Penn State joined the Big East at the point that Miami, Virginia Tech, and Pittsburgh, along with the other schools, were in the conference and playing football, I believe the Big East could have survived additional years, if not maintained the status.
I agree with that. Because even UConn was trying to do something football-wise, right? I think even UConn was trying.
UConn was coming. Yep, UConn was coming. Villanova improved their program.
Yeah.
Think about this. You survive and you have a national presence with Pittsburgh, Penn State, Syracuse. Remember Michael Vick, that juggernaut that Miami had for the years, BC.
Pretty good in football.
And you bring in Rutgers or somebody to expand just truly. See, the Big East was about the geography, as Red just said. And the real difference now is the Big East brand and what was built by the inaugural years, with us being the initial freshman class, became such a basketball brand that you couldn't rebrand the name. So as you had the defections, you had to keep the name and try to replenish the team. Because Marquette and Creighton and Butler, great programs, and they have benefited. They have benefited from being associated with the name Big East, not the geography Big East. And
no, they benefited more than the conference benefited, I think. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, it's good to see Connecticut come back. You still have the traditionals there with Georgetown, St. John's, and Seton Hall, and they're all doing well. Yeah, Villanova's back, but you know, I along with all the
football playing, we might be back.
Right. Well, and I read an interesting article the other day that since going to the ACC as a basketball program, we haven't fared as well. And you know, certainly we're competitive. And you know, I read an article recently and made a note of it in the book. You know, when you start talking about the best basketball programs in the country, we were rated the number 11th overall basketball program historically. And you know, you're only talking Kentucky and you know, the Arizonas and UCLA's and Kansas's. When you start talking about we're just outside the top 10 as one of the most recognized historical national programs, that still makes us elite. And I'm proud to say that, you know, Red, Leo, and I, just the whole era of the Big East was a continuation of the success that Syracuse had built as an ECAC school.
Well, you know, I will tell you as a fan, I thank you guys for being part of that, because you guys and the rivalries of those, especially those original 16 or how many?
Yeah, original six. Original six.
Yeah, I mean, those rivalries lasted throughout the duration of, you know, at least Syracuse's time there. Yeah. And I think college basketball is lesser today because those rivalries are really no more. So at least to the extent they were then.
Well, as part of a conference, yes. And I think what they've learned over the years, because Syracuse, Georgetown is renewed. Yeah, I would hope St. John's and Syracuse finds a way to renew that rivalry, because
but you don't get those home and homes, you know. And
the home and homes was you know, as we moved on in the junior and senior year of the Big East, those home and homes were just invaluable. You know, they talk about Magic and Bird and escalation of, you know, their years and that matchup. You can talk about periods of college basketball that evolved college basketball, and there may not be any more important evolution of college basketball than from 1979 probably through 1987 than the talent and visibility that the Big East generated. And through 87, when Syracuse went to the finals, you're talking Derek Coleman, you're talking Pearl, you're talking Sherman Douglas, you're talking Ed Pinckney. You could go on and on. I mean, you can go on and name 20 names before credibly you have to consider Red.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you know, again, being the age that I am, close to you guys, and, you know, everybody talks about college basketball exploding with the Magic Bird final, right? But I think the creation of the Big East had as much to do with it as that, in my mind. Absolutely. Maybe that's just a regional bias on my part. I don't know, but I really
I agree.
No, and exactly. I agree. That's what I was just saying. You know, when you start talking about conferences and influences, the 85 year was something no other conference has ever done. And
phenomenal.
You know, you know, you're talking about Patrick and Chris and Ed Pinckney leading their teams. And, you know, I biasly have a proud distinction and said 2 years earlier, I was first team with those talented guys and young men. But anyway, they were tremendous.
Is there anybody that came after you guys that you wish you got a chance to play with?
You know, I would have loved to play with Billy Owens. I was up there for a summer camp one time, and then you know how the counselors play at night, and he gave me some passes that were so on point that I was saying to myself back then, wow, I wish I played with this guy. You know,
nice player. He kind of slips from the memory. That's a great one. How about you, Eric?
Per Washington, and interestingly, again, another story in the book. Going into coming out of my junior year, one of my professors encouraged me to apply for the European Studies program. and I was accepted. And so as we entered our senior year, I had the option of studying the first semester overseas. And I haven't shared the story with a lot of people. And I went and talked to coach, and, I got to be honest, I didn't, as nice a career as I had, and with the talent that was coming in, I think I could have come back and played if I had taken a year off. I think it would have been unfair for me to take a semester off on the team. That would have been selfish. And I write in the book, I have no regrets about my playing time at Syracuse. And the only regret or thought that I had is, had I taken my senior year off and come back as a fifth year and do graduate school, I would have the opportunity to play with Pearl. And Pearl and I later on became, good friends. And when he came back to do his degree, again, I don't say this disparagingly. I'm glad God put me in a place to assist him as I could in that process. And we became, we had a good bond, and I really respect him. And when I'm telling Pearl's story, I have to tell this story. I'm in Michigan, and I'm driving rideshare, and a young lady gets in the car from the Northeast. I'm in the University of Michigan campus, and she said, "I'm from the Northeast." I said, "Oh, I played at Syracuse." She said, "My dad went to Syracuse." I said, "Oh, get out of here." She said, "What's your name?" So she texts her dad, and he comes back and says, "Oh, I remember Erich Santifer." And he says, "Ask him, did he play with Pearl Washington?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "No." And this is a true story, and I write about it. I drop her off. I pick up another young lady. She's from the Northeast. And I said, "Oh, I played at Syracuse." She said, "Oh, my parents are huge Syracuse fans. Let me text my dad." No, she called her dad. He said, "Oh, I remember Eric. Ask him, did he play for Pearl?" Did he play for Pearl? Yeah. True story. So I drop her off, and school's to start. I pick up the next ride. And again, not that it matters, but demographically, these are all three, young white ladies. She hops in the vehicle, and she says, "I'm from somewhere." And I said, "I play at Syracuse." She said, "Get out of here. My parents in Syracuse." She said, "I got to tell my dad. He's a big fan." Boom, boom, boom. "Oh, yeah, I remember Eric. Ask him, did he play with Pearl?"
We should start calling it Syracuse Pearl. Hey, I got to get ready to go do some pick up of my nephew. I got him working on a schedule. So
no worries. I told you guys an hour. I do appreciate you being with me today. Real quick, Syracuse going to make the tournament? Eric?
Are they winning the Clemson game?
They better be. Jeez.
I got to be honest. I don't follow as closely as I need to. With a little bit I read, they're bubbled. There's a lot of teams that are going to be disadvantaged by not having postseason conference tournaments. I think if they win out, they'll have an opportunity. They're talented enough to compete at the NCAA level, and if they go to NIT. It celebrates the 40th anniversary when we went to NIT and went to the finals. So
that'd be nice.
The tradition is still strong.
How about you?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if they take into consideration, they've had some games that at the last minute were canceled, which could have helped their rating and their power stats. The first team that comes to my mind with that is Louisville. I think Louisville canceled on them twice. Had they got those games and even won one of them, I think they'd be in a lot better position. And I think if they take that into consideration, they might give them a nod. So I'm going to try to stay biased. I'm biased, but I'm going to say, yeah, they squeak in.
Well, they had a nice win against Carolina, even though Carolina's down. It's always nice to beat Carolina, right? So that's a nice win the other night. Listen, guys, let me know when the book is out, Eric. We'll definitely.
I will. Thank you for having me. Every day, God U.S.
And we'll push the red collection for you too, Tony.
All you have to do to go to see the apparel is just one word: redcollection.net. Takes you right to the website.
I'm looking at it right now. There's some good stuff there.
Oh yeah. I got to try to sign Eric up there and get an Erichs Santifer line too.
Excellent.
We've talked about partnership. You got to be on my side, and I got to be on your side. We'll expand both opportunities. God bless you guys. God bless you, Orange Nation. God, I wouldn't change a thing. Thank you, Syracuse. Thank you, Orange Nation.
Thank you, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Great memories.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Good luck to Syracuse wherever they go for the postseason.
That's
all right.
Orange.
Looking forward to seeing you, being with you again, guys.
All right, guys. Thanks. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. So, guys, my guests, Tony Bruin, Erich Santifer, former standouts, Syracuse University. What a great interview, I thought. We covered a lot of topics. Erich's book, Everyday God, Promises Made, Promises Kept. Obviously he's got a lot more to say in the book about his time at Syracuse that he didn't want to share tonight. Maybe some things about some insight about Jim Boeheim off the basketball court that might be interesting to read. I'm going to be looking for the book. I will let you know when it's out, and definitely visit the redcollection.net. There's some great stuff there. If you're a Syracuse fan or any fan, if you're a Tony Bruin fan, check it out. Or if you just like orange apparel, check it out. Anyway, great show today. Great time with these guys. Next week, my guest will be Butch Lee, former All-American at Marquette, NCAA championships in Al McGuire's last year, 1977. Butch will be joining me live from Puerto Rico, where he lives now, and we'll talk about that season. We'll talk about his college career and more with Butch Lee next week. Join me Sunday for our Stream of Consciousness show here on TGI Sports Talk and the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. And also, don't forget Monday night, that Big East preview show. My co-host, Mac McGrath from Mac and Jack, and the guests that I mentioned earlier. Watch the promo. I'll share it again here in a little bit. But we'll be live Monday at 7 p.m. You guys have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.